All right. So welcome, everyone. I'm glad to have you here for our Drive Electric Lunch and Learn. Thanks for hanging out for a couple minutes while we got everything set. We've got a lot of great information to share, and we're happy to welcome our guests. We're going to learn a lot about what's happened over the past year. A lot has changed, and things continue to change really rapidly. So we've got excellent information for people with all different types of vehicles, whether you're here as an individual looking to learn about passenger vehicles, also about the charging infrastructure, and more. So we're going to start today with Cassandra Damblu from ChargEVC. And Cassandra, can I just turn it over to you?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Amy, for the introduction. My name is Cassandra Damblu, and I am with ChargEVC, which is a coalition of diverse group of stakeholders, which include utilities, automotive retailers, manufacturers, technology companies, local governments, power producers, environmental, consumer, community, equity, and labor advocates. And our focus is mainly on accelerating the transition to a fully electric transportation in New Jersey. And we do that primarily through policy and program development. So I'm going to briefly touch on why EVs are important, what are EVs, how are they fueled, quote unquote, and the state of the state for EVs. So as many of you know, motor vehicles emissions are the single largest source of air pollution in New Jersey and beyond, accounting for over 40% of our greenhouse gas emissions. And as a society, transitioning to EVs is a direct way to combat local public health concerns and address the greater climate change issue on a global scale. Locally, EVs are also a resiliency tool as they can be incorporated into strategies that strengthen the grid. And moreover, they provide additional benefits to the EV owners that include lower maintenance costs, fuel costs, and overall more convenient to own. And they're the latest and greatest in technology, therefore they're more high performing. When we talk about EVs, we are talking about plug-in electric vehicles that use a plug. What we had been calling a hybrid vehicle does not have a plug and uses a small battery to make the fuel use more efficient. A plug-in hybrid has a small to medium-sized battery and has a low electric range of about 30 miles. And at that point, the fuel kicks in. And battery electric vehicles, BEVs, run 100% on electricity. I think it's safe to say that all plug-in vehicles are more efficient. In fact, the average New Jerseyan only travels 30 miles, about 30 miles a day. So if you are charging your plug-in hybrid vehicle every day, then you really shouldn't have to use the fuel at all. I am going to briefly touch on the charging standards because at ChargEVC, we focus more so on the policy development and the standardization when it comes to the technology, not necessarily the specifics. So in this first image is the NACS charger. That is the Tesla native model. And the second is the CCS, which is currently the dominant standard. And the last is only found on two models, the Nissan Leaf and the Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid. Where things get interesting, as I said, the middle one is the dominant standard. Therefore, that is the standard the federal government is requiring for the nationwide charging network. However, many OEMs have recently announced that they're shifting to the NACS standard, the Tesla standard. Therefore, that will soon become the dominant standard. That means two things: that one, the federal government would need to update their standards to include the new standard. And two, there would need to be upgrades along the state's DCFC ports, which are the fast charging networks. And I'll get more into that in a second. The good news is that no one is going to be left stranded. Most OEMs do give you the charging adapter that you would need for either or. So charging 101. It's important to note the major cultural difference between your EV and your traditional ICE vehicle. An EV is meant to be charged at home or at work as you would your cell phone, whereas your typical gas station experience where you fuel in your car every few days will be less frequent when you have an EV. The DCFC, the fast charger, is where you will get your juice quickly in about 20 minutes over a cup of coffee because you forgot to charge at home and need to top off, or you're on a road trip. Otherwise, you should be using the level 1, which is your standard outlet at home, or a level 2 charger to charge overnight or during work hours. So the Murphy administration has been very supportive of the just transition to a clean economy in general. And in 2020, they signed the EV law, which was much informed by much of the analysis done by ChargEVC. The EV law establishes goals to get more EVs on the road. And in order to get more EVs on the road, there must also be sufficient public charging available. So the EV law sets goals for charging infrastructure for the passenger vehicle goals include 330,000 plugins by 2025 and 2 million by 2035. 85% of all vehicles sold to be EVs by 2040, 400 fast chargers at 200 locations by 2025, and 1,000 level 2 chargers by 2025. And moreover, the state is also undergoing the process of adopting California's advanced clean car rules, which increases the percentage of light duty vehicle EV sales required, ramping them up to 100% light duty EV sales by 2035. As you can see, New Jersey is one of the fastest growing markets in the country. As of June 2023, there are approximately 128,000 electric vehicles registered in New Jersey, and 2% of the vehicles on the roads are EVs versus 1% last year. And this number includes battery electric vehicles, which are represented in green, and the plug-in hybrid vehicles, which are represented in that mustard color. A few short years ago in 2012, there were only 338 EVs registered in the state. So as you can see, things have grown significantly in a short 10 years. The chart shows how the number of registered EVs have grown exponentially. And more recently, we can see that the first half of sales, that is the statistic for 128,000 vehicles, it's only through June 2023, which means that's only half of the year, which means that we have a lot more growth for the rest of the year. And we're already reaching the same as 2022, which was approximately, I have this somewhere in my notes. I guess I lost it. But anyway, you can see we're almost there. And I think it's very interesting to see that year to date, we're also seeing about 13% of sales, which is up from 10% last year and 5% in 2021. I think this chart also it really interestingly depicts how the plug-in hybrids are phasing out and the battery electric vehicles are the ones that are dominating the standard today. Okay, so these maps show the EV density statewide with Atlantic County circled. For comparison purposes, I included the map I showed last year on the left. And these maps not only show that each county has begun to adopt EVs with the darker green signaling more, But in the last year, most counties have significantly increased their registration, resulting in an even darker shade of green in the current map. And partly it makes sense that a lot of the greater concentration is in the more densely populated northern counties. But because of this EV density map, developers aren't as incentivized to build out charging infrastructure that is needed for greater adoption in the other areas. And this one shows all of the public charging locations available across the state, which includes level 1 through DCFC for both standards. There is a nice concentration again, showing significant progress, though it's not nearly enough needed to reach our goals because, as I said, more charging infrastructure leads to greater EV adoption. And we need approximately 4,000 ports for our expected EV population in 2035, and we are currently at 877. And as expected, there are more along the Turnpike and the northern counties, the main corridors, and some along the Parkway as well, though the concentration is consistent with the previous density map. And again, thanks to the Murphy administration, there are a lot of significant goals for EV adoption. However, we need further investment to further build out the infrastructure to meet those goals. Thankfully, the state and federal government are in alignment with ours. The recently passed IRA allows $7,500 in total tax credits per new EV purchased or leased, with additional provisions for used EVs as well. And then there is access to over 104 million under the new National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure NEVI formula program established by President Biden's infrastructure law. And these funds are specifically to build out the national public charging network. And then the state and utilities also have several incentives for vehicles and chargers, which my colleagues will discuss in more detail with you today. I just want to end by saying that this transition is here, and it's here on the consumer side as well. Almost all OEMs have made electrification commitments, and that includes General Motors, Honda, Mercedes-Benz, Nissan, and they have committed to being 100% electric by at least 2030 in some cases. And a consumer report also found that 71% of Americans express some level of interest in buying or leasing an EV, 14% of which were a definitely, 22% would seriously consider, and 35% might buy an EV. And that's all I have today. And like I said, ChargEVC is a membership-based coalition. So if there is any interest, please feel free to email us or check out our website. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Cassandra. That was great. And I apologize, I should have mentioned that we'll be taking questions at the end. You can put them in the Q&A or in the chat as you go, and we leave time at the end to take care of that. So thanks too for people who submitted questions in advance. And we will move on to Kathleen Lewis. Kathleen is from the BPU, and she's the e-mobility program manager there. So Kathleen, we welcome you and thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much. My computer's being slow to share, so hold
That's
on
all right.
1 second. Bear with me. There we go. Great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. So you heard Cassandra talk a little bit about a couple of these things, but I think that it's always important to make sure we have our goals in mind. And those goals were established by a 2020 law. First of which is that 330,000 registered light duty EVs by 2025. And then that continues to move forward. And also moving our fleet, our government fleet, to electric vehicles is part of that goal that's embedded in the law. In order to have those vehicles out there and being utilized, we also need to have chargers. And so some of those chargers are public chargers. So we have a goal for December of 2025 for 400 fast charger locations, as well as 1,000 level 2 charger locations. You can see from those maps that we have mostly exceeded those at this point. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, but also that 15% of multifamily residential properties have chargers and 20% of all overnight lodging. I think it's important to note that when we are building out this EV infrastructure, it's not just for the residents of New Jersey. New Jersey is a through state. And so we need to make sure that we are able to support those who are driving through our state and those who are coming to visit and to do business here as well. There we go. Here's our EV plug-in registration. Cassandra showed you sales. This chart shows registration. Because that's what we're judging. Our goal is 330,000 in registration by 2025. If you look in 2020, that number seemed really daunting, right? How are we going to move from 41,000 or 2019 when we really passed the law because it was signed in January 2020? How are we going to move from 30,000 to 330,000 in just 5 years? Well, you can see when you talk about all of the incentives that New Jersey has put forth, that needle moves really quickly. And so now, halfway through 2023, we're at 123,000 vehicles on the road and registered. Cassandra's map is a lot easier to read, but ours also shows this great picture of sort of where that charging is. For the most part, there is accessible public charging everywhere in the state of New Jersey. The Pinelands, where there's not a lot built there and not roads to go through it, is sort of that exception if you look at that donut in the middle of New Jersey. But if you recall, we needed 400 fast chargers to hit our 2025 goal. We have 900, and we needed 1,000 level 2 chargers. We have 2,000. So we are well on our way. We've zoomed past those 2025 goals and are moving ahead when it comes to charging. The way we really do that is we all work together. A great illustration of this is that I am sharing some of my colleague at DEP's information today because we all work together. It is a real whole of government approach. We are working to make sure that the vehicles are incentivized, the chargers are incentivized, that we are modernizing grid operations at the same time, that we are to make sure that that power is accessible, and that we are building the workforce that's needed for this new economy. Cassandra talked a little bit about NEVI, which is the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. And there's a couple of things that are important to note as folks are thinking about how it is that we're going to be funding these things. So first off, New Jersey receives $104 million in formula funding every year for 5 years. So it's a little over $500 million that is specifically for building out fast public fast charging every 50 miles across New Jersey. And quite honestly, that is also across the United States. So if you are on a major thoroughfare, by the time we hit 2029, you should be able to charge your vehicle every 50 miles, no matter where you are in the country. That funding runs through DOT. And we, again, whole of government approach, we work with them. There are also over $2 billion in competitive solicitations for community charging. There were tax credits for manufacturing and purchasing for vehicles, chargers, and batteries. And there are other competitive funding solicitations going on right now for school buses, for transit, for ferry, for port electrification, battery recycling, and workforce development. So there's a lot of money and time invested in making sure we get this right, from the manufacturing all the way to the customer getting in that vehicle and charging. Excuse me. So each of the 4 electric utilities were required to create programs to help fund the installation of chargers. They are permitted to address the make ready for residential, level 2 workplace, level 2 multi-unit dwellings, level 2 public, and fast charging public chargers. Utilities are not allowed to own any chargers until they can prove that it is an area of last resort. And there are rules set up around that they have to prove that no one would ever be interested in putting a charger there, and that there is no existing charger within at least 25 miles of that space that they're looking at. Multi-unit dwelling rates for charging must be substantially similar to residential rates to make sure that those who live in multi-unit dwellings are not seeing substantially higher rates just to charge their vehicles at home, because we know that 80% of the charging is going to happen in the home. There was a demand charge solution that each utility was required to provide for fast charging until their next rate case, when they have to have EV rates proposed in that filing. They can cut the total of utility, federal, and state grants can cover no more than 90% of the total cost of the project, and they must have a universal charger. Proprietary chargers can be co-located but will receive a smaller incentive, and they are required to share data, session level data, so we can understand when people are charging, how often they're charging, where they are charging, so that we can work to set rates and also to address managed charging as we need it. Those programs are over $215 million in EV investment, spanning from 2021 to 2026, depending on the utility. They are funding public, workplace, and MUD incentives. As you look at the numbers here, you can see again, those far exceed the goals that we have for 2025. And most of those are not realized in the charger numbers that we posted, because most of these programs started during COVID, and because of supply chain issues, we have lots of applicants who are just now getting their chargers installed. So I talk a lot about how our programs on the utility side incentivize make ready. What does that really mean? The make ready, and I stole this slide from DEP, whole of government approach again. The make ready really is everything up to the stub, is how we refer to it. So the utilities in general will fund up to the stub, and then you can look for another grant for the charger itself, and we're going to talk about those in a moment. Most of you are probably familiar with our Charge Up New Jersey program. FY23 is the 4th year of the program. Actually, FY24 is the 4th year of the program. We have provided over, and I can update this slide as I talk, we've provided over $90 million to over 25,000 electric vehicles. That program is currently open. It is $4,000 for vehicles with an MSRP under $45,000, and then up to $1,500 for EVs with an MSRP between $45,001 and $55,000. Only battery electric vehicles are eligible, hybrids are not. The residential charger program is a $250 rebate for eligible home EV chargers. That charger must be on a compliant network. Those are listed on that link there. And that again is to share your data so that we can understand when people are charging and move towards managed charging programs that will save EV owners money and will help us manage the grid. And that is in addition to the utility make ready incentive. So as a general rule, we try to make our programs consistent. And so the next couple of programs that I'm going to talk about all have the same rules. You must be an Energy Star certified if you are a level 1 or level 2 charger. Vehicles and chargers may not be purchased prior to application of the grants. That's new in FY24. You must meet or exceed the federal uptime requirements, 97% uptime. They must be networked dual port chargers on one of those pre-approved network compliant networks that are listed on the DEP site. Those incentives may be stacked, as we talked about with the utilities, up to that 90%, but you cannot stack an It Pays to Plug grant on top of a BPU grant for the same charger. So a couple of our programs, Clean Fleet. We talked about how we are moving towards the state's fleet moving to electric. We know that it's important to make sure that our local governments are doing this too, not only because it helps reach our emission goals, but also because, quite honestly, government is a great place for people to really see those EVs in action and realize that it will work for them too. So those clean fleet incentives are $4,000 for a light duty battery electric, $10,000 for a battery electric class 2B through 6. You get $5,000 for a public charger level 2, $4,000 for a level 2 fleet charger, and up to $5,000 for the make ready for a fleet charger, because those are not eligible for utility incentives yet. So you can add your utility incentive to the public charger, but not the fleet charger right now. And then $50,000 for a public or fleet fast charger. And if it is a fleet fast charger, not available to the public, then you can get an additional $50,000 for the make ready. There is a 50% bonus for overburdened municipalities as listed on our website, and applications are due on November 30th. Multi-unit dwellings, it's really, oh, I'm going to go back for 1 second. Sorry. The amount of chargers and vehicles you are eligible for is listed in this chart, which you can find on our website. It's based on population. We followed the same sort of concept with our multi-unit dwellings, making sure that people who live in apartments, condos, and townhouses, that they have access to chargers is really important to getting people to convert to electric vehicles. And so they can receive up to $4,000 for each level 2 charger. If they are in overburdened municipalities or deed restricted low and moderate income housing, then they're eligible for up to $6,000 per charger. And again, those awards are based on the size. And you can see that chart there. And those applications are also due on November 30th. EV tourism is it's a competitive grant, and it is for tourism destinations. So downtowns, boardwalks, historic sites, parks, any of those can be tourism locations. $5,000 for a level 2 charger, $50,000 for a fast charger, and you're eligible for 6 level 2s and 2 DCFCs per site. All those applications are due on November 30th. People ask a lot about when we're going to have those utility fleet incentives. That is part of our medium and heavy duty straw, which we have had ongoing work done on. And we are looking at working with the utilities to provide incentives for publicly accessible fleets, public, medium, and heavy duty charging, and then smaller incentives for private fleets that are in overburdened municipalities. Just a little shout out to my friends at DEP. They have the It Pays to Plug program that both has periodic competitive solicitations, as well as a rolling solicitation for level 1 and level 2 chargers. And that is a first come, first serve. So you can apply and be on the waiting list. And when there's money, that money will be paid out. And then our NJZIP partners over at EDA also have funding specifically for medium and heavy duty vehicles, and those are vouchers. And then I am going to talk a little bit real quick for folks about some of the laws that have made charging easier as we move forward. So first, there was the EV law that created those goals that we talked about. Then there was the right to charge law that essentially says if you live in a townhouse or a condo association run development, that they cannot restrict your ability to charge. They can't tell you you can't install your own charger. They can put the same rules around it that they do around the color of your door or any of those other things, but they do have to allow you to install them. Then we created the EVSE parking requirements law, as well as the municipal EV ordinance law that went into effect and defined charging stations as a permitted use in all areas. That has really alleviated a lot of the backlog in municipalities who were trying to decide if everything had to go through planning or zoning. They're now a permitted use. You still have to apply for your permits and make sure you're following their rules. But it does help. In addition, there were requirements for new construction for parking spaces to make sure that they were installing chargers, as well as to make sure that they were putting make ready into those spaces. So the way I like to think about it is, imagine that you have 100 parking spaces. You are going to need to make sure that when you do this, you put 15% of those parking spaces are going to have to be ready for EVs. 5 of those are going to have those chargers installed in the first year. Within 3 years, you have to install the other 5. They will already have had them make ready. And then within 6 years, you have to have all 15 chargers up and running. Here's my information. Feel free to reach out. And thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, Kathleen. That was great. Lots of good information. And we do have some questions that are coming in, so we'll get to those after we hear from our final presenter, Kyriakos Anastasopoulos. Sorry, Kyriakos. Kyriakos is with us from Exelon, which is the parent of Atlantic City Electric, and here to give us a perspective from the utility side.
All right, thank you. Let me share my screen real quick. All right, let me see. Let me know if you guys see it come up.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for that. So my name is Kyriakos Anastasopoulos. I'm the program manager for Atlantic City Electric's EV Smart Make Ready program. And my general goal today is just to provide some information regarding our program and help everyone on the call just familiarize themselves with what options we have available and things like the application process, among other tools that we may have as well.
Excuse me,
yes?
Excuse me, I'm not seeing your screen yet.
Let's try that again then.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
There it is. Great. Thanks.
All right. Great. So just kind of repeat that. So what we'll be doing today is really just providing a bit of a background, just walking through the application process and what you can kind of expect there. We'll be sharing some general information about what you need going into that, and then also some general tools that we have available for anyone really looking with support on their EV journeys. So the overarching goal for me in general is to provide as much information I can within this time frame so that you have a good starting point for where to go if you need, or if you have any questions that need to be answered. All right, so just jumping right in then. So I run the EV Smart Make Ready program. This program received approval from the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities in February 2021. First and foremost, this program is really meant to support some of the goals, such as 330,000 EVs on the road by 2025 goal that were mentioned earlier. It's also a way for us to determine what infrastructure is really needed to support charging early on, which means like a more reliable system overall for and better scheduling for work for customers. And for our customers, we have a real opportunity to build out informed time of use rate options in the future, which is one of the main drivers for the program. So the program overall provides what we call make ready incentives, which were explained earlier, but I'll go over those again later. And that's for customers looking to install smart level 2 charging stations as well as DC fast chargers. Overall, that equates to about 3,250 charging ports across our service territory, and that's for residential businesses, and public charging altogether. And then the following slides will show what the breakdown of that actually is. So as I mentioned, this program is specifically for make ready incentives, which means anything that is infrastructure related that is required to basically make a charger operational. So that includes things like conduit, wiring, electrical boxes, labor associated with that, and utility side work as well. So that's something such as like potential transformer upgrades. And this is really more on the side of any commercial type of applications. What that does not include is the cost of the charger, as we mentioned earlier. So that's or anything done to kind of keep that charger operational. And below here, you can see the different incentive levels that we have for the program based on the subcategories. So you can see for residential, it's up to 50% of make-ready costs up to $1,000. We do also limit the ports per each individual site as well. And you can see the total plug goals there as well. The only other thing to mention here is that make-ready incentives can be stacked with the ePace plug program and other grants. Again, it's for up to 90% of the total project cost, though, so we can't actually give you any more than that when taken together. The other thing that we're offering is a couple different options for rates. We have a DC fast charging rate option, and as Kathleen mentioned, that's going to be live until the next rate case, or at least in this case until 2024, or until we have a better solution in mind, leveraging the charging data we have captured from the program. Additionally, something that we have coming very, very soon is a net off-peak credit program. So that's for customers that are taking residential supply under our basic generation service. They'll be able to get a 2-cent credit for any net off-peak charging done. So that is basically all your off-peak charging minus any of your on-peak charging. And that's going to be 2 cents per kilowatt hour. Okay, so how would you go ahead to be part of this program? So basically, customers that wish to apply, you guys can do so easily just by going to the ACV Smart webpage. You just click on any one of the programs that you're looking to apply for. You can apply for multiple as well, and just hitting the Apply Now button. So this will take you to a portal which will ask you to register and just provide any additional information that we may need. It's also going to give you the information you need to log back in to review applications, knowing that not an application doesn't need to be fully completed at one time. Once you're ready to apply, and you do apply, the general process is that we'll review your application just to determine if you have all necessary documentation, if you qualify. This is a lot simpler for residential customers, as for commercial applications, it may be a bit more involved. Given that there may be utility upgrades required, site maps, etc., that we may need from you guys to actually be able to process that application. So there's a few more steps involved, but at the end of the day, we'll be able to walk you directly through any of that as soon as you start engaging with us. And then you can engage with us on either through email or at the phone number I'll provide at the end of the presentation. So just transitioning right along, I just want to highlight that each program has some of its own operational equipment requirements, and those can be seen below for each subcategory here. But the commonality between them is you have to be an Atlantic City Electric customer. Contractors can submit on behalf of our customers, however, customer consent will be required. You have to have a charger installed by February 17, 2021, which includes the work started, and then have work completed by a New Jersey licensed electrician. The chargers also have to be from the approved list of chargers that we have on our website. You can actually find that list in the link I have here for the program manual, and which will be shared with the rest of the presentation after, I believe. And then you must agree to share charging data with us to an ensured charger communication. So we can't actually provide you with a rebates or incentive until we can verify that your charger is communicating with us and we're able to receive the correct data. The only other thing I want to say here is that the list of approved chargers, even though if you don't see your charger on here right now, that doesn't mean that it won't be part of our program. It just means that either we're still working with the manufacturer or the network provider, or it's somebody that we have to engage. That being said, that does take some time. So if you do find a charger on the list, we would recommend going that direction first. We're also looking at additional solutions to be able to capture required data. However, at this point in time, we are doing everything through the individual chargers. just for some awareness there as well. So just some things to know as you're looking to apply to these programs, or just, as you're looking to electrify your vehicles in general. Just be aware of your electrical needs, understand like the amount of power that's going to be required. And then when and how you're going to charge as well, based on whatever rate you're on, it's really dependent. There could be a difference as to, when you decide to charge and how that impacts you. And then finally, just make sure you're working with a licensed electrical contractor. We do have a requirement right now for that to be the case. We want to make sure that these are safely installed. And at the end of the day, we do have the required documentation from customers to be able to verify that, this was completed. Other questions that you may want to ask yourself is, what is the purpose of the installation and when do you plan to install it? Basically saying that if it's something that you're looking to do later on, maybe wait a little bit to start the application. We'd love to obviously know that you're looking to do that. So we do have a way for you to self-register as well. But your application would be at that point in queue, and it would just kind of hang there until it's completed. So just so you guys are aware of that, and we will keep bugging you guys if it's not completed to get the required information to do so. Then additionally, just know if you require any service upgrades. Again, this is more for any commercial customers that may need some transformer upgrades, or even for customers that are looking to install in their homes, and they may need some changes to their panel and other things and potential wiring. So it's likely more for commercial, but there may be situations where it could be residential as well. Finally, just understand if you have all the documentation required. It's something that we ask for in the actual application. This is pretty much what we do require, but there's always additional pieces of information that we may need. And then just as mentioned previously, just understand your rate options. Depending on how you charge your vehicles and for whatever purpose that is, it's going to affect how what your bill looks like at the end of the day. Finally, I just want to conclude with this. We do have some additional tools and resources on our website, same place as anything else, just our EV Smart website, that can help you figure out, what is the benefits of, going EV, if it's something that you're just trying to figure out if you want to do that. We have links to other EV incentives and promotions. You have links to some of the other pages from DEP and here as well. So, and then just, other things like readiness checklists, charging finders, for where, there may be charging around the Atlantic City territory, and additional tools as well. So, and then finally, if you guys have any questions, just feel free to reach out to us at evsmart-ace@icf.com. ICF is our partner that's helping support this program, as well as just, go to the Atlantic City Electric EV Smart website. And we do also recommend that, I'll just go back to this here. We do have a tool here for self-identification. So if you are looking to install EV chargers and are or looking to get an EV, we do recommend that you self-identify, so we do have you in the system, and that way we can, keep you up to date with anything that's happening with EVs in Atlantic City Electric, and anything else that comes out, or any future programs.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much. And I think some of the questions that have come in have been answered by our speakers, but I'd love if we could take a look at them now. And thank you all for sending your questions and for being here. We ready for that, presenters? I think we could start. There were a few that just came in while you were speaking, Kyriakos. Sure. And I think your talk answered them. There were a few questions about installing a charger yourself, and if there's incentives if you are doing it yourself. And I think you clarified that it needed to be a licensed electrician, but that would apply to Someone asked if they can use a union electrician to upgrade and install.
Mhm.
Is that okay?
Yeah, we do require a licensed professional to install these things. I mean, at the end of the day, we're looking to make sure these things are installed safely, effectively, and customers sometimes may not understand like what may be required. Sometimes there may be upgrades to circuits that may be necessary, right? So it's like while customers can do it, it is something that we want. um,
Yeah. How about this one? Are off-peak credits available for residents if the resident is purchasing their energy from a third party, not Atlantic City Electric? Atlantic City Electric is used for delivery of power.
Yeah, not at this time. So the specific rate that we're providing is for customers that are taking service under basic generation service, and that was actually approved in June, I believe, of this year, finalized at least. But as of right now, it's only for BGS customers.
Right. And while we've got you on the spot here, there was another question about JCPL. Their website states that funding for homeowner charging installation is ending at the end of September, 9/30, due to funding constraints. Would you happen to know anything about future funding?
I think he probably wants me to take that one. Am I right?
Okay, great.
So JCP&L had a filing. The board approved a budget based on what their projected interest in the program was for the length of their program. Any additional changes to that budget or any movement of budgetary monies from one program to another. So for instance, if they said, oh, well, we haven't had as much done in public charging, we want to move it to residential charging, requires either board review or board action, and those are months-long processes. So they have several options available to them, and it's up to the company to choose a path forward.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen. Does Atlantic City Electric support vehicle-to-home backup when the grid goes down? If there's a large battery vehicle to provide backup power, is that something?
So I don't know, Kyriakos wants to, and I know I just butchered that, I'm sorry. And I knew it as I said it, but I know he may want to talk about this from a particular Atlantic City Electric perspective, but there are separate proceedings with the board on storage, and those would be, and that would be something that happens in the future from a statewide perspective. I don't know if you wanted to address the ACE piece specifically.
Yeah, I mean, this is from a separate perspective. I would look at it from the just basically under managed charging, but it's more for charging as opposed to just using it for home backup. If you're using it for home backup, that really kind of falls into another category, which is something like our interconnection team is somebody that would have to speak on that.
Okay. Rob asked, my current charger does not meet the communication requirement with Atlantic City Electric. If that changes, does he need to reach out, or will Atlantic City Electric automatically take the application back to an active status?
We're working with the network providers to make sure they can meet that. So if it is a network provider that we're working with, and you have applied for the program and you're in our list of customers that are in waiting to proceed status essentially, or unsupported equipment statuses, we will reach back out to you when that becomes available, or when we've onboarded that OEM, and we'll continue your application at that point in time. So we do have, if you've applied for the program, we have you. If the equipment hasn't been supported yet, and just know that we're likely working on it and trying to get that onboarded.
Any support for vehicle to grid from EVs for grid support?
So I think that goes back to what I just said. That is a separate storage proceeding that has to do with our storage and interconnection pieces. One of the reasons that we are so focused on transportation emissions is because we've done so many things to clean our grid, which means that our grid emissions are much lower. So we are always focused on providing a clean grid, and this may be one of those options in the future, but those are separate proceedings.
There's some concern about the cost for fast charging, and questions if there are free places to use DC fast chargers in our area.
So I think that there's two pieces to this. I think that it's important to note that our incentives are designed to incentivize early adopters to install chargers early in New Jersey, while there are not enough EVs to support the profitability of that. They are not designed to be a permanent crutch to the industry. And so the goal here is to ensure that we are incentivizing early adopters and creating programs that the free market will see profitability on in the long term. So that means a couple of things. One, free charging for level 2 as an amenity for a multi-unit dwelling, for a workplace, for a shopping mall may make sense because they are spending a little bit of money to get those customers in. Fast charging, that is very likely not ever going to be the case because those cost a lot more to install and to maintain, and that is a very specific service. Secondly, the legislation that allowed for quicker adoption of EV charging defined EV chargers as a service, not a resale of electricity. So the BPU regulates how much it costs for the electricity to be sold to the charging company, not how much the charging company charges for it. That's a service that they are providing, not a resale of electricity. That being said, one of the things that costs a lot of money is having enough electricity to always supply that fast charger. And when we don't have a lot of EVs on the road, that cost is higher because I have to always have that supply, but nobody's buying it. We call those demand charges. Each of the utilities has what is referred to as a demand charge solution. And it is a temporary solution until they go to their next rate case, and then they adopt EV rates that address this larger issue for the long term. That will drive down rates, but also the more EVs on the road, the more that drives down rates because there are more people using those fast chargers. And so those costs are spread out over more users. Does that make sense, Amy? I'm going to say to you again.
Yes, it does.
I want to ask everybody, but I know it's a complicated issue. So
yeah. Okay, taking a peek here. Someone was asking specifically about charging along the Garden State Parkway. I know you talked about the plans for strategic.
The Garden State Parkway and the New Jersey Turnpike are actually very different. The Garden State Parkway, the New Jersey Turnpike, and the Atlantic City Expressway cannot use federal funds. And so they could, in theory, use some of the NEVI funds because these all have to be located on privately owned sites that are within a mile of an exit. So they wouldn't actually be on the Turnpike. But Turnpike Parkway and the Atlantic City Expressway, because they are toll roads, are prohibited from using federal funds. And so if they want to put chargers on those places, then the state has to contract with a vendor to provide those. So those are separate.
Right, great. Cassandra had talked about different types of chargers, and is there a new standard coming for vehicles
In terms of chargers?
Yeah.
And I don't know if Cassandra talked about this a little bit. So if she wants to, if she wants to weigh in, please feel free. I think that there's a couple of pieces there. First, while there are many chargers that are moving to that, it is still unclear if that is only going to be on the proprietary network. So for instance, Toyota and some of the others and Honda, and I'm mixing them up, but they have paid Tesla to utilize that connector and are paying to be part of that proprietary network. If only vehicles that are in that proprietary network can plug in to those, then that creates a problem, because then not everyone is able to use it. And that means really just plugging in and the connector won't talk to the car. If they open up their protocols, if they have open protocols and they allow everyone to utilize those, then those would be things that would be state and utility funded, and federally funded. From a federal and a state perspective, you could put, we do not limit how many different types of connectors you put on your port. So you could put a CCS and adapter and an NACS adapter on the same port so that it could be utilized by both. That would be acceptable right now and would allow for them both to utilize it. But it is not a standard yet. Cassandra, I don't know if you want to touch on that too.
Oh, that was perfect. And I think from a consumer perspective, as I said during the presentation, the OEM will not leave you without charging. And typically they do offer the other converter so that you're able to charge at either port. But it is messy and it's a development market, and we'll have to see how things pan out in the next couple of months.
Okay. Let's see. I think we've gotten a lot of the questions. I don't know, I would welcome any of the panelists or coworkers if there's something that I've missed. All right, and I don't know if our panelists have any sort of closing comments, anything that's kind of come up through our conversation that you didn't get to address earlier. Maybe not. So I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware that tomorrow we will be hosting our EV showcase here at the ACUA at our facility in Egg Harbor Township on Delilah Road, 6700 Delilah Road, from 4 to 6. And we'll have all different types of vehicles here, passenger vehicles, some fleet vehicles, different types of equipment, a school bus, and we have representatives from the DEP and from other organizations, Clean Energy Program, and many more. So there'll be a great chance to talk to people who drive electric, to talk to some folks from dealerships that have vehicles to offer, and much more. So so thank you so much for participating, for listening, for sending questions. And don't hesitate to send any follow-up questions. We can definitely reach out to our panelists with any further questions, and we will be posting a recording of this presentation as well as slides from our presenters on our website at acua.com/driveelectric. And I just want to say there's so much going on. It's really pretty amazing. As we were preparing for our events as part of Drive Electric Week, just visiting some of the dealers in our area, it's very interesting to see how things have changed from year to year. And there's many more chargers that are being installed at dealerships and around the area. I know Joe Clark was on the call. If you're still here, Joe, they just installed some new chargers in Ocean City. So we've really got a lot of the infrastructure expanding and a lot more options available to people, both in vehicles and places to charge them. So, and that's thanks to you know, some of these great incentives and really careful movement towards electrification of the transportation sector. All right. So I think that's it. And I hope that we'll see some of you tomorrow at the ACUA to check out some vehicles and to get to ask some more questions. All right. So thanks, everyone. Thanks to our presenters and attendees. All right. Take care.